Speaking of the current situation, the coronavirus pandemic, what changes in your work have occurred? Well, of course, recent events have a certain impact on coastal fisheries and onshore plants. I've been running this association since 2005. At the beginning, it comprised 8 small companies. Now this number has grown up to 30. Half of them is fishing companies. There are also 3 processing plants, as well as services, education, and ship repair companies in the association. We see our priority in arrangement of coastal fisheries, and I must say we have some progress here. Our activity is fundamentally based on allocation of state and federal resources. If back in the day only 1,500 tons of resources were allocated for these companies, now it is 50,000 tons. This is a big step forward for the coastal fish industry. Both the government and local authorities provide support, seeing that coastal fisheries is the socially oriented segment to supply food to our people. Our policy is aimed at providing people and factories with both chilled and live fish of high quality. I would like to emphasize the difference between Norway and Russia is that the resources we are dealing with is delivered in full to the coast of Murmansk, and we built our work based on this principle. Speaking of problems, I would point out at our fleet. It is old and worn out. The wear level has reached 85%. This problem came up 20 years ago. But our association became the first organization that brought up the need to upgrade our fleet. I must say that the government responded to that need and developed a law according to which allocated quotas can be used for fleet upgrading. As a result, in 2016, the first ship was laid down. Of course, it goes beyond saying that this law provides that shipbuilding or fleet upgrading can only be done in the Russian shipbuilding yards. For this reason, we started our cooperation with the Yaroslavl region, calling for the participation of the governors of both regions. With joint efforts, we made it possible to lay down the first ship called Vimpel, which was put into operation this year. I'd like to notice that we became the first company in Russia that laid down a ship for coastal fisheries. All of this we managed to complete during the pandemic. If we talk about the fleet upgrading, I would like to mention the difficulties that we encountered. The shipbuilding yard responsible for building the ship Vimpel had to halt its operation due to the COVID-19 pandemic outburst. The deadlines were missing. There were certain contractual terms according to which if the ship fails to be put into operation within the time frame, the right to the investment quotas intended to cover the expenses may be lost. So these deadlines were at risk of being missed. I personally had to go to that yard. By the way, the company responsible for the building was Karel Ryba Company, which is a member of our association. It is run by the youngest owner, who became the first one to take the risk of laying down the ship. As of this moment, our plan is to build 10 more of such ships. So, due to the pandemic, the building was stopped. I had to ask the governor of Murmansk and Yaroslavl regions to save a good project. Within 10 days, this problem was resolved, and this was done under pandemic conditions. I got a thank you letter from Yaroslavl for drawing attention to this issue. As a result, the building went on. There is a standard in the law of 2016 which doesn't allow coastal fishery companies to make products using coastal quotas. For over 2 years now, the government has been allocating extra quotas to us so that we could supply all fish to factories and people of our country to ensure food security and improve price policy in the market. In the past, there was a standard in the legislation according to which coastal fishery companies were allowed to make products. However, in 2016, this standard was removed for the unknown reasons. I would like to emphasize that all our ships technically are not meant to process fish. All they can be used for is catching fish and delivering it to the coast. That's it. These ships aren't equipped with their on-board factory. Totally, there are 50 ships in the basin. 22 of them belong to us, and none of them is capable of processing fish. So no matter how much we wanted, we wouldn't be able to make fillet and fish flour, for example. According to the new law, there are two types of fisheries. There is no such thing as coastal or industrial quota. In fact, there is only one quota type and it covers all fisheries. However, to get a 20% bonus, which is additional financing, it is necessary to apply for coastal fisheries, whereas the industrial fisheries are not supposed to get this bonus. Now let me tell you a few words about fish processing. The initial processing includes bleeding, gutting, and beheading. All of this is done according to the standard to ensure the quality of products. We can't carry this fish unprocessed as it will simply go bad. In accordance with the standard, fish can remain unprocessed not more than 1.5 hours in the summertime and 3 hours in winter following the catch. At the same time, it takes us more than 3 hours to cover the bay. To be able to carry this fish unprocessed, it is necessary to have ships of other type, namely tanker ships. And here we go again, we can see the need to upgrade the fleet. As for the measures that we take to combat the pandemic, I would notice that we have a well-organized procedure for prevention of infection spreading. We try not to go too far away at the sea. The voyages are short. Nevertheless, one of the crew members got back from his vacation and happened to be sick with COVID-19. That ship was halted. However, all necessary tests were immediately taken and 1 week later the ship was back at the sea. Aside from that case, big companies have never experienced any difficulties due to the pandemic. Thanks God, everything is good. During the pandemic, a program, Our Fish, which is a fair, was initiated. Now this project is confronted with difficulties. The problem is we can't go at sea now and supply fish of the right quality, which is processed fish. Store owners are afraid of sanctions that can possibly be imposed by the controlling authorities for selling fish that haven't been processed. As a result, this fair is now operating on the basis of customers' wants. In other words, if someone wants to buy a kilo of chilled fish, it is needed to place an order, let's say 5 kilos at a certain price which complies with Our Fish project. A kilo of cod costs 209 rubles at the fair, whereas this price is 399 rubles at the local stores. However, there are not very many people wishing to buy fish, which negatively affecting this fair. The pandemic has influenced the demand. The fish sale has become more difficult due to decrease in purchasing power of people. People began to work from homes and go to stores less often. Also, they are trying to save their money and not to spend more than needed. If previously the fish was sold right away as soon as it got to a store, now the pandemic made companies find their customers. Our government started to pay closer attention to the coastal fisheries. The governor has begun to take care of the wide sea. Everybody has understood that coastal fisheries are highly needed for people. Export is important, but first and foremost, people of our country must be satisfied. And that's the right approach in my opinion. We can see the steps forward here: extra quotas for coastal fisheries, shipbuilding, investment quotas, and etc. All of this is done for a reason. The government is working, and I can see it. At the end of our conversation, based on the positive aspects that you have pointed out today, it is a growing number of companies of your association, support from the government which contributes to addressing problems, increase in quotas, fleet development, and so on. Would that be the right conclusion to make, that the overall coastal fish industry of Murmansk region now is on the rise? That's right, I agree. I would add that the course determined by our president in Astrakhan back in 2007 is correct. It was said there that coastal fisheries are in need of development. Since that time, the improvements have begun. One of them was legislation revision. Now some members of our association are approaching me with the question whether to apply for coastal fishery for the coming year or not, taking into consideration the issue with our border services and ban on fish processing. I usually tell the following: since the government is providing preferences, helps in development, coastal fishing must be continued. So the course taken by our regional government to develop coastal fisheries is right. I'm sure about that. As for that problem with the border service, it will be resolved. I have no doubt about that. The future is in coastal fisheries.